And we are live. This is Peter Palmiati of Human Art Studios, and welcome to another Studio Synergy number 46. It's been a while. So, today on the show, you have Ben. Hey, Ben.
Hey, how you doing?
Welcome. We have Don with us today, a new guest.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And Eric.
Hi-oh.
Oh my god. And Greg.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. And we have some topics to play with, but it's
Oh, we
been
do? I thought we were just going to sit here and babble like old men.
well, we could babble like old men, uh, since no women have joined us tonight. Yeah. Lisa's in the other room. Okay, Gaz said he can't make it. But yeah, so oh, we lost
Greg.
somebody.
It
Yeah,
probably had
we
a
lost Greg.
little hiccup. Updates back.
And he's back. He's going through changes.
Yeah, that's true.
So, is anybody excited about anything currently that they can talk about on the show that just want to jump in and talk about it? Chance. Ben, are you working on your book tonight?
Yeah. Originally I had planned for Asgard to be multiple issues. After doing the first one and having hell trying to sell the book, I decided that the next release will be essentially the rest of the story. So I'm looking at about 150-page graphic novel to release it. I'm about like 39 to 40 pages in right now, and that's kind of the new direction Asgard is taking. Since I'll be doing the coloring, I won't have to deal with that expense, that was the reason why I was going to do it in issues. But I much just rather just go ahead and knock it out, do the coloring myself, and be done with it.
Wow, that's taking on a big workload.
You have no idea. It is it is going to be definitely a labor of love, so to speak. It is a lot of pages to do. Luckily, I learned quite a bit from the first issue, doing the first issue. Uh, I think I have enough experience now to essentially say, okay, I can do this. The first issue was essentially the first time that I ever did an entire comic myself. Especially considering I'm the writer and the artist. But this time, yeah, I think it's gonna take a little bit longer than I would want. But it'll be completely mine. I don't have to say, well, I didn't like that because so and so did that, or any of those things. It'll just be me. So uh, I'm kind of geeked up for the challenge. Um,
Yeah, well, I mean, I know how hard you've been working on it, and you know, I I envision myself doing coloring on some of my projects, so it's something I have to like really focus on down the line. But now, now I'm just if anybody who's watched my few videos that I posted recently, I've been out of YouTubing and pretty much offline for like 7 months. But I'm back, and I hope you're glad I'm here. Um, and yeah, I'm just going to get into a whole lot of making art. And tonight I'm just sketching. I'm just, hosting a show and trying to draw something challenging to me. So I'm just sketching. Um, but yeah, I want to get back to my comics and definitely like, you know, dive into coloring on at least one of them. You know, I might have teams on others, but we'll see. We'll see. But good luck, man. You know, it's like the first issue. You know, I purposely didn't read the PDF yet. You know, I read a couple of pages and you know, I got a general idea. I want to read the book in my hands, so that's what I've been waiting for. And
I've heard that from so many people. That it's like, well, I was like, you know, I gave you the PDF so you could read in case it would take too long. They're like, I don't want to read the PDF. Like, it's the same thing. No, it's not. I want to read the book. Like,
paper is a completely different animal, and it changes the experience completely. And
yep,
it's the appropriate. It's the best, most appropriate medium for the medium at this point. Still.
Yeah. So, I have about half of those rewards to go out. So, there are some that are, you know, in people's hands, and the reviews have been actually really well. I mean, a lot better than I thought they were going to be. So we'll see where everything goes.
Any reviews you want to brag about?
Let's see. Well, the biggest review that I would like that I could probably even brag about was Chris Claremont read the book. I met him at a convention, and technically him and Kevin Grievous, the guy that created Underworld.
Right. Cool.
So I actually got to talk with them, and Chris Claremont really liked the book. He liked it because it was different than most comics. It was drawn and written closer to, I guess, more along his time frame of books. But it's kind of weird because the guys that love the book, I have essentially two parties. There are people that love the book because it's different. There are people that are confused by the book because it's different. So I'm like, okay, well, I mean, so I did have one commentary with one guy. He was kind of confused about the book in some aspects, and when I told him it was originally planned as a graphic novel versus just a single issue of a comic book, he immediately got it. He immediately, it was like the magic key where he was like, oh, now I understand. That was what was getting to me, because I'm so used to normal serial style comics. It didn't feel like that. It just felt like it was the beginning of something. I was like, correct. So it's just the beginning of the graphic novel. And because it's more, when you're writing a comic, you usually have a theme or a story per issue, even if there's a meta overall story going on. You might have a conflict between one or two characters that you're trying to focus on for that book while still continuing the overall story. I didn't really go for that. It was mostly intros for the characters and the major story. So bad on me if that's not the quote unquote prescribed way to do it. But that was the best way I felt that I could do it. I'm going to introduce you to characters, kind of give you pieces of their story, and kind of show how it links to the overall story, and then I'll continue from there.
Works for me.
As long as the narrative is still, easy to follow, that's all that matters.
Yeah, I don't know. It was some guys that were saying that they didn't know anything about Norse mythology or anything, so they didn't really know who the characters were. In
a lot of people don't know Norse mythology.
Yeah, I mean, my thing was why you just didn't treat. Did you know this main character? Did you know him in real life? Have you seen him in another book? Have you, you didn't know anything about this character, but you followed him. So,
yeah,
why did the Norse mythology characters confuse you so much? Was it the fact that you thought you should know? I don't know. It's very hard to decipher reviews because you don't know where they're coming from.
Especially if your introduction to a lot of those mythos are because of like, Marvel, which likes to use a lot of Norse stuff.
And I think that was one of the problems with people. They were so used to the Marvel Norse mythology, so they were expecting that.
Yeah, and let's face it, Marvel's version of the characters are relatively accurate most of the time, but they have a lot of fun with the actual stories that were told. So.
Yes. I mean, I had an argument with a guy in a comic shop here where I had put the book on the shelf. I know the comic book, the store owner. So I wanted to see what the book looked like next to, say, Batman or Spider-Man or whatever. So I just put it on the shelf while me and him were talking. And one guy came in and he was like, "Oh, man, the new Thor book." And I looked over. They're like, "No, that's not the new Thor book." Really? I was like, "No, that's my book. It's the one I created." "Oh, so you're working for Marvel?" "No." "So you're not drawing Thor?" "No." "So that's not the new Thor book?" "No." "Oh, so Marvel came out with a book called Asgard. So is that going to be about Thor?" Like, "No. I have no affiliation. I have no affiliation with
Which, by the way, the Thor from Marvel's comics technically isn't the actual Thor.
No, it's not.
No.
Technically, he's not the actual son of Odin.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was really funny. I mean, I felt proud that I was able to produce a quality level that the everyday consumer would walk in and thought it was a mainstream book, but that alluded to a problem I was going to have, was where people thought it was a Marvel book,
which is silly because there are books about Norse mythology out there. Like, just because I see Thor on this, especially depending on what he looks like, because if you draw Thor in like the traditional manner, like the way he probably would have looked back then, you probably look at that and it's like, and you would probably think it's like Conan the Barbarian, and then you see the word Thor, or you see Asgard or something Norse related, and you're like, wait, what? Oh, wait, is this a Vikings thing? And I'm like, where do you think that look comes from?
Like, yeah, that was one of the other things creating the book. I kept getting messages about how to draw Vikings. And I'm sitting there like, there's no Vikings in this book.
Like, Vikings believed in that mythology because that was their religion. That's why they wore the Thor's hammer around their neck. Like, yes, that was their religion. But they're not one-to-one. Like, Norse mythology did breed over into other cultures of that area. It wasn't just that specific group of Vikings. Like, there was different areas that believed in that stuff. That's where a lot of Christianity does come based off of a lot of that stuff, as well as Judaism. So, like,
yeah, it was weird. I was really starting to get nervous when people kept sending me messages. Well, I hope you draw the Vikings right. They didn't have all this stuff on their helmets, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, that's not what this book is about. So,
but yet they have no problem.
Sorely disappointed.
In the fucking Marvel, and yet they have no problem with the way Thor looks in the Marvel comics.
I don't even have Thor in the book.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, if anyone complains about the way Vikings or the way you draw Asgardians, I'm like, have y'all seen Kirby's original drawings when he was doing the book? And do you really want to look at that man and say, you're not drawing it right?
Well, some of those traditionalists or whatever you want to call it do have major problems with any depictions outside of
any depiction that isn't the dude wearing fur armor,
anything that doesn't conform with whatever latest archaeological or anthropological they want it to be as period accurate as possible. I'm like, if you're doing it in the period, okay, it kind of makes sense that it should look the way people probably would have dressed back then. But if it's just based off of it, well, plus you're talking about fantasy. I mean, this is not.
Yeah, the moment you go into high fantasy, you're like, all bets are off. Like, just have fun.
Yeah, and that's what I did. That was one of the reasons why I created this book the way I did. It was I wanted to avoid that stuff. It's like I'm doing something completely different. I'm way out in left field. I'm out here by myself. I'm doing my thing. I didn't even want to have to deal with, well, that's not historically accurate.
It's just like, well, this isn't a historical book, so
exactly. So it's been funny sometimes.
like in my case, it's a little weird. Like in my case, my Thor that's going to be in my book is going to be more or less period accurate, just because I like the look. I just like the idea of modern day times, but then you have this Thor showing up in like a freaking like fur kilt, no top except maybe like a strap or something, and just a big freaking hammer, long red hair. Like for me, it's more because I just think that looks cool. But I have no problems if someone else draws him draws those types of characters differently. It's your interpretation of a story that originally was told through word of mouth. Like, he doesn't have it to, Vikings looked different depending on where they went because they got materials from different places that they raided. A lot of even if you go to like Scandinavia or, all the Norwegian areas and all these different cultures that had different looks, like it doesn't matter. If it's not historical, like you're not making this is a historical accurate thing. Then who cares? then it's like, who cares? Just have fun with it.
Yeah, I have a black guy with fucking Mjolnir. I'm sorry, it's completely different.
Yeah, really.
It's fucking great.
Yeah.
What do you think, Don?
Yes. No, I agree with you. I think a lot of people get hung up on, a lot of silly stuff that really doesn't matter. I mean, if it's your interpretation of it, flow with it. That's really what it's all about. But other people, they'll just get so hung up. Sometimes I think people just argue for the sake of arguing.
I agree.
On issues. So, you're never going to please everybody. And again, I forget who it was that said, if it's your book, it's your interpretation. And that's the main thing. That's what's more important.
Yep.
And you'll get your following from that.
So far, I have a group of people that love my interpretation of Hunan and Mugen, or Munin and Hugin. Sorry. They're like, man, I just love those designs. Who would have thought that the two ravens would have looked like that? And I was like, thank you. That's the idea I went with. So, but they have problems with other things.
So, if nobody knows Don, he's a YouTuber, and you post up videos, I guess, whenever your schedule allows. Since anybody who's watched my past episodes knows most of the people in the group here, do you want to talk a little bit what you're doing with your channel?
Yeah, I can. The reason I started the YouTube thing is just because it was just more for self-therapy. I was still working at Amazon at the time, and I just needed some sort of release and a venue to. I don't know. I mean, I don't know about all artists, but sometimes you just get your self-worth. I needed to find that I was losing myself at Amazon. I needed to come back and be me again and start drawing. And I just started surfing the internet and seeing other people posting stuff. And I thought, you know what, that's going to be an outlet for me. So I just started sitting down and creating some just drawings and posting them up. You know, if somebody saw them, great. If not, no big whoop. But at least it was a means to an end for me, and it just I don't know. It sort of became fun. So, but anyway, I'll reverse a little bit, and I worked with Marvel on the outskirts years ago, back in '91. It's going to be like a little backstory, not too long, but at the time, it was a few years later. I think it was '93, '94. I was contacted by McGrew Color Graphics. I lived in Kansas City at the time, and I was not one of 9 artists that was chosen to create, at the time, the first digital line of trading cards for Marvel, and that kind of jump started my art career, and I had my ups and downs with it. The trading cards sort of went by the waysides because art directors and creative directors, you know, they don't keep their job, they move on, and you sort of lose your contacts. But I kind of stayed on the field with the toy industry, and that's kind of where I got my niche for the main part. I did a lot of toy packaging art for Toy Biz, and Toy Biz actually at one point, I don't know if they still do, but they bought out Marvel back in the '90s. I think if I wasn't mistaken, Marvel went.
Oh, way after.
They're going through some bankrupt.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just started doing a lot of toy packaging art. So I had my fun time with the Marvel's characters there for a while, and got into not toy packaging. I already did that, but children's books, and that was fun. Started doing a lot of Nickelodeon stuff, albeit licensed characters, but they was still. They were fun to do. Real Monsters, Rugrats, stories like that. So that, I mean, it was a good time. I actually got invited to go to Nickelodeon. Actually visited Marvel Studios in New York. Again, it was fun. It was short-lived, and my career seemed to have been, I don't know, somehow connected with the whole economy crash, which happened in 2008. And when that happened, all of a sudden everything started falling apart. As far as work for me, I don't know if it was being farmed out. A lot of businesses went internal as far as art was concerned, and it just was pretty tough. I had to kind of lift off my savings for a few years, and then ultimately, I'm not ashamed to say, but I lost everything on that. I managed to float till about 2010. After that, it was all over. I lost my house, everything. So for a while, I was me and my family. We were on the street. We were homeless, and it was pretty interesting, though. I tell you what, it was something like that would either tear a family apart or draw it closer together. I guess I was fortunate and blessed enough that it drew us closer, and we kind of pulled up stakes. Well, we didn't pull up stakes because we didn't have stakes. Yeah, bank took the stakes from us too, and we had a minivan and a moving van, and we just headed to Tennessee and started all over again. Good side is I'm now working as an artist again. I'm working for Spin Master, a lot of licensing products with them. Also working for Random House doing children's books. I can say the title I'm working on is Rusty Rivets. So he's a relatively new property that have come out through Nickelodeon. So I'm working on the third book. 2 of them have been published, and I'm working on the third one. My house is paid off. I don't have any bills. So I'm sitting pretty easy. And like I told Peter earlier, I said I'm kind of riding the wave, so I'm going to ride it for as however long it takes me. So I consider myself blessed in that department. I've always been fascinated with comic art. I just haven't been, I'm not that talented as far as doing sequential artwork, but I love it. I mean, the people who can do it and do it well, I'm fascinated with it. And I'm more of that type of artist. I just, I don't know how to explain it. It just, it's got to be that one singular image. I like that. I like you know, if it tells a story in one image, that's fine. But I don't know. I've tried comics, not professionally, just, you know, kick around on my own, and it sucks. I gotta admit, I just can't do it very well. I mean, I've seen an image on this. Well, there was an image of let me put my cursor on the person who's more Ben. Ben keeps popping something up. That's pretty cool. I love that. That's a pretty cool style. Gregory's working on something, and I just don't have that finesse. I think because I struggle with it. I don't have that inking style. I'm not bad at anatomy or anything like that. But again, I'm not so much of a storyteller. You know, tell a story to me, and I'll do it. Well, I just can't. And that looks pretty cool, Greg.
Oh, you know? Thanks, man. Thanks a lot. I was going to say, I tutor people and I teach a little bit locally where I live. And I don't hear the kind of problems that you're talking about because, of course, I haven't ever dealt with anybody who has a full, AAA professional career behind them, right? It's usually people who are also learning how to draw as much as they're learning how to do sequential art type stuff, right?
Right.
But I mean, I would say that first of all, I mean, the mechanics in even neurologically, like the mechanics of doing single illustrations in a book, like, that's a long tradition. Beardsley, Wyeth, etc. Mid-century illustrators for all the magazines that were doing short story illustration, right? Like McGinnis and stuff. I mean, there's an entirely different set of mechanics to that storytelling where it all has to happen in one picture, and then there's a page flip, and then there's another picture, or maybe no picture, and then several page flips later. The second or third drawing has to make up for the fact that there aren't drawings all the way through. I mean, all that stuff that goes into distilling is very, very different than what happens panel to panel. But it's, first of all, that isn't to say you couldn't learn it. And second of all, you don't have to have an ink style. You can do whatever. Any art is acceptable for comics. That would be the second thing I would say to encourage you. The third thing I'd say to encourage you is that, it's perfectly acceptable even on an indie model to work with a writer. So if that was something where you were like, well, I'm not really comfortable making up my own stories, well, that's fine, because there's plenty of team effort stuff that happens too.
Right.
So if you were interested, I would say, don't let those particular roadblock or mental roadblocks get in your way of maybe trying to do it, but rather I would say, get the advice from folks that do it more often and say like, well, okay, so how would I make it comfortable for me? But of course, the other side is that you are a storyteller and you're doing a tremendous amount of that work, right, by working with kids' books and other things. So Yeah,
I guess that's true, because I was sitting here thinking, I go, well, in a way, I am doing somewhat sequential work, because
you're doing storytelling. You're absolutely,
yeah,
you're a book illustrator, so I mean, you're doing narrative illustration.
Yeah, I sort of cut myself short on that one, because they do give me a minimal, like I'll get a page and part of the storyline's already been established, but they'll just say, hey, we want Rusty and Ruby in this panel, and Ranger Anna doing this, and it's just like, okay, so
so do they back into the story from the art?
Say that again.
Do they actually back out of or back into the written story post artwork? Is that the process?
Well, basically, these stories are taken from episodes that have already been aired.
Oh, I see.
And
so there's a lot of pre-made there.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So even though it's been established, there's still a lot of latitude to interpret it, because you are working on the constraints of 9 by 10 inches on a single page, and so to get that whole scene in, there is some finagling to do, and you do got to lay out the composition to get it right. The double page spreads, they're a lot easier to work with. You have some more real estate to throw a lot in. But yeah, I guess in a way, I do interpret the story two-dimensionally on the page, in a sense. But man, to tackle a comic book or a graphic novel, even, that would be. I have always kicked it around. I would love to try something like that. Maybe one of these days. That'll be one of my bucket list things. Before I go, that'll be one of those things I'll really want to work on.
Yeah, and like I said, the best way to minimize the sort of roadblocks about it is to just say, like, well, flip any of those things that you're talking about on their head and say, okay, well, how would I be able to get around the fact that this X thing is really getting in my way? Yeah. So it's somebody else is writing it, maybe, and the other thing is, maybe it doesn't have to be 6 panels per page, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe there's always an answer to convert what you do. I mean, especially what you're doing, into other forms of narrative art, and if you want to do it, the other thing is, not everybody does it, so like, that's okay too, right? But I would think, I mean, it just seems to me like you probably got a few stories in you somewhere, even if you were working with a writer to help formulate them and get them in a format that works for you. I bet you have a ton of stories in you, particularly with your family and everything too. I mean, that's a hell of a story.
Yeah.
And that's the nature. That's most successful indie comics now are not necessarily fantastical stories. A lot of them are actually stories that a major book publisher can chew on, which is human interest stuff and things like that. So given your connections to more traditional book publishers, I would say, like, that could be a thing for you to consider one day.
Yeah, never know.
Don't do it. I'm telling you, don't do
it. You see,
don't start the headache.
Yeah, see, I'm looking at your all styles. They're different, unique, but what I find here's what my biggest problem that I've struggled with for years, and that's I noodle my illustrations to death. I just get it in there, and I try to put every little hair and pore into a character when it's not even going to show up, and it's frustrating. And I over the years, it's getting better, but I have to force myself to pull back. Even when I do these drawings now, I know they're only going to be, a book that's only going to be 11 inches tall, 10 inches tall, but yet I get into the habit of, when I work digitally, man, I blow that puppy up. If one pixel's off, I gotta fix it. And I've really getting to the point where I'll just work on the image two sides on screen, and I'll just leave it at that. And
do you come out of a painter background, like, I mean, as in a traditional painting background, or what's your background pre-digital in terms of completing art for illustration?
Yeah, my pre-art was mainly pen and ink, pencil.
There you go.
And
that explains some things. It's like, man, I fuss over every single detail. Yeah, pen and ink. That's the nature of that beast.
Oh man. And then as far as my color work would be, it was mainly airbrush, watercolor, and colored pencil.
Okay.
Really didn't do much of the only reason I didn't get into oils or anything like that is just that I just didn't have the space, the room, and the time to do stuff like that. It was everything was kind of quick paced, a quick pace for me to get things done. Everything was really self-taught. I mean, coming out of high school, I tried to get into art school, but it was way too expensive for me. And I got into a junior college for a 2-year associate's art degree in commercial art. But they didn't offer any illustration courses until the semester I quit or left. And so everything was just basically what I can glean off of others, and then trial and error.
Right.
So I had here's another hard luck story. I landed a gig up in Omaha, Nebraska as being an internal illustrator. I stayed there for 2 years, and I amassed a pretty good portfolio, and I decided to move back to Kansas and try my luck there. And so I went knocking on doors, cold calling, and was having some pretty good success. I was kind of like a week into it, and then went out on a date after, let's say, I went for an interview at an ad agency, showed them my work, they liked it, went out on a date, went to a movie. After the movie came out, my car was stolen.
Jeez.
Oh boy.
And it was like, I couldn't believe it. I walked all over that parking lot thinking, this has got to be a bad mistake. But ultimately, the car was gone, just gone. And it had my portfolio in it. And so...
and this is the days when, your book was sometimes even the finals and stuff.
That was it, yeah.
It was not everybody did color proofs for their book, so...
And so they found the car 3 days later. It was completely stripped out, and they took my. I had a motorcycle helmet. A leather coat. My portfolio they had no use of, so they just tore it up.
Oh man!
Every page was tore up.
Yeah.
And I called the studio that I worked for up in Omaha. I just said, do you have anything? Any copies?
Tear sheets, right?
Yeah, something. They go, man, they couldn't help me out. So what had happened is the quick and dirty stuff that I sat down and just did a lot of black and white stuff. I pulled out and I would just copy images. I would think of, what did I do? I try to think of back projects that I did for this studio, and I try to recreate in black and white, graphite, whatever, because I could afford to get those reproduced pretty quickly and slide them in another portfolio. The downside was I just became known as a black and white artist locally, and that's all the work I got was just black and white, and I did a lot of catalog work, that way. And it was okay. And so it was a struggle to get back into doing paintings and color illustrations. It took a while. It really did. Because, once you get known for one thing, that's all they call you for. They're not going to trust you. And it took a while.
So when you were doing catalog stuff in black and white or graphite, then was that like kind of LL Bean looking stuff and
pretty much
outdoorsy kind of, or like that Orvis look, where it's all like pencil or they want it to look a little like an engraving or something.
Yeah. And it wasn't even that elaborate. It was pretty much just straight. Just interpret this. We want a bold outline. Give us some thin inner details, and we're good to go. A lot of it was like House of Lloyd's.
Okay.
Right.
House of Lloyd's way back when. A lot of catalog work for them. I did land a gig with Nelson Weatherwright, though, and they were a little more flexible in how I would interpret some of their products. So Nelson Weatherwright was a lot of hunting and camping gear. So
right,
it was fun to do. So, yeah. But then I some nice illustrative stuff for some a lot of some agricultural stuff that would come down the line. And again, I would just do some quick watercolor, color pencil, a little bit of airbrush on top, something to keep it going. And a lot of that stuff, I still have my old portfolio from those years, and I got them tucked away. I would throw some gesso on a board and lay in some watercolor. I'd spray on some spray mount just to get some, let it diffuse that the color on the gesso and make a nice, neat effect. And though I kind of struggled, I always wanted to work, I guess, from dark to light, and I never really could do it with the medium that I was using. So,
no, I mean, because you need a gouache oils or acrylic to do that, because it's an additive process.
Yeah, and I just couldn't do it. And then one day, and then I don't know. Then I was just fascinated by when I was still up in Omaha. I was doing a poster for Union Pacific. They were
cool. Yeah.
They were located out there, and I think it was I don't know what kind of year anniversary they were going for, but it was a fun poster to do. I was working for that ad agency out there. So I went to Union Pacific, and they took me into their graphics department. And they had bought one of the very first graphics computer. Oh, let me tell you what. And they took me into this little room, and it was little only because the size of the computer took up the rest of the room.
Yep.
And the screen, oh my gosh, man, it was only 16 inches.
Right.
And that wasn't even viewable. That was the whole screen, and it was built into the computer. I mean, it was like this wall-mounted computer with this screen, and they were just like in love with this thing, and it would only do basic geometric shapes, a square, a circle, and they could snap a line in now and again. And I looked at it and I thought, I don't know, this thing's got a long way to go, for me.
Because you're thinking like, I can just draw this stuff like so fast, and this.
Exactly. And I don't even know what they spent for that thing, but I was somewhat intrigued with it. And then years later, I did when I moved to Kansas, once that all, I think there's probably about 3 years had passed since then. I did see something of an illustration that was done in Illustrator. Now, keep in mind, this was like in 1990, and it looked like it was airbrushed. I mean, they did something really pretty phenomenal with it. And I thought, wow, this is coming up looking pretty good. And I started kicking around the idea of maybe getting a computer. And so I wasn't really doing so well as an artist. I was still struggling. I was making some money with it, and I had kind of a decision to make. And I had some money saved up, and I decided I'm going to try to do it and buy a computer, because I was trying to justify where the technology was going to go, and I wanted to be somewhat a part of that at the time. So I spent my whole savings on a computer, and the majority of my family thought I was crazy. They just thought that was like not a good decision. And
what year is this, by the way?
This was 91.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I bought a 2CI, a Mac 2CI, and let's see, it ran at 16 megahertz. It had
screaming hot.
I think 8 megs of RAM and a 250 megabyte hard drive. And so I got that, a 16-inch monitor. I did get a Wacom tablet, and this sucker was huge. The tablet was huge. It weighed like 5 pounds.
Is that back when they still used a puck?
No, it didn't have a puck. It was still a wire. It was a wireless stylus, but it was a huge. Let me see. Think of a Cintiq that you would hold in your lap.
Gotcha.
Only it wasn't a screen. It was just a tablet, and I was just so new to it. I just figured, hey, I could just use this whole tablet. Then I only found out that out of that whole tablet, I was only using maybe a 2-inch square. That's where my stylus was really doing most of the work. But anyway, so I got this computer, right? Okay, so we had it delivered at our house on a Wednesday and set up, plugged in. And House of Lloyd called me on Thursday morning and said, "Hey, Don, you want to come in and got a project for you?" I said, yeah, that'd be cool. So drove out there, and I hadn't seen him in like maybe a month. So, I'm ready for a project. And they said, "So what have you been up to?" And right off the bat, I said, "Man, I'm into computers now." And they go, "Really? Well, maybe you can do this project on the computer." And I said, "Yes, I can." And I haven't even started the computer yet. It was just still sitting in the office, in the spare bedroom. And so I was on the drive home. I was going, man, I don't want to screw this up. And it was just a really easy line drawing. All they wanted was a globe. So just think of a circle, longitude, latitude lines, and then North and South America. That's all they wanted. Mm-hmm. And so I went home and I told my wife, I go, "Man, we gotta figure this sucker out." And at the time I had freehand. I don't even think freehand is around anymore. No. But it was freehand and Illustrator were like, I got talked into freehand because in Kansas they were saying, "Hey, that's what Hallmark is using." And I go, "Well, okay, maybe I'll get work from Hallmark," which I never did. But my wife had the manual to freehand, and I asked her, "How do I make a circle And he said, "Okay, you grab the sphere tool." I go, "Well, where is it?" And she would have to point to it, and that one simple drawing that would have taken me maybe 30 minutes to ink out took me all night. It took me all night. Yeah, it took me all night to do it in freehand, just to figure out the tools. And I printed it out on a piece of paper, and the next day I delivered it to him. I said, "There you go." And he said, "Hey, it looks great." He said, "But can you change the line width on the longitude and latitude lines? They're a little too thick." I go, "Yes, I can." Again, we repeated the process. I go, "We got to figure, how do I change the line width?" But once I figured it out, it was just a real simple, select the line, adjust the line width. It's a done deal. Now, here's what the beauty of it was. I gave that to him. That little project, that little globe, paid for that software program, that one job. And I thought, okay, so once that was done, I think it was within 6 months I had the whole computer paid off. It was a done deal. And then work started flowing in because I was, at the time, one of the very few digital artists in the area. And then I kind of became, a proponent of digital art in Kansas City. There were agencies and graphic designers and art directors who they still wanted to do stuff traditionally. And, they wanted me to do watercolor stuff. Don, we want you to do a watercolor illustration of this. And then what we'll do is, back then what they would do, I would have to do a watercolor illustration on either a certain type of watercolor paper or board. If it was the watercolor board, it would have to be as such that they could peel it from the backing so that you put it on a drum scanner.
A drum scanner, yeah.
Exactly. And then, and so they were digitizing it. You know what I mean? And so I would.
Yeah, real old time scanner. We used to use those at the newspaper I worked for, drum scanner.
Right.
So
right.
Everything. That's why everything had to. The only other option would be they'd have to shoot a 3x5 transparency of your artwork and then slap that onto the scanner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was fine, but it would definitely add a step that maybe they didn't want to deal with.
And then it would degrade, a little bit.
Yeah. You'd have to color correct while you're making. The lab would have to take care of that. It's too much work.
Absolutely. And so I would go in. I would say, let's save a step. Let's save a step. Why don't I just illustrate it digitally, and you don't have to go through that process? A lot of them would balk at it, and it was a hard row to hoe on some of those. And one time though, there was one guy that he became a believer in the sense that I was doing an illustration for him, and it was for a food service agency, and it was of an astronaut doing a spacewalk. He's out there, but on his shoulder he has the patch of the logo of this company, right? And so I sent it to him, and he goes, yeah, it looks good, but we need some more folds in the logo. And I said, well, Marty, that's cool. I said, I tell you what, why don't you come over to my place real quick, and we'll work on this together. I want to show you what this is like. And he stood over my shoulder while I had it up on the screen, and just painted it digitally and corrected it right off the bat. And then it was like, after that, he was sold. This was a designer. He did work his desktop publishing, but he only had a black and white screen. He just sort of slapped everything on and did everything once it was printed out, and then he would send it out to be printed from there. But once he saw that, man, he upgraded, and we worked for years together on a lot of projects. And so you know, for me, the computer became, in a sense, a way to work the way I wanted to work. You know, it kept me, like I said earlier, I wanted to work dark to light, and I never really could do that before. And here I could slap on black and then just go on in and just start laying in my light tones and have some fun with some stuff, you know, and I love it. And so for me, it was good. But I still draw with paper, pencil. I still love doing that. And I still like doing my watercolor stuff. So it's just another tool is the way I look at it. So
yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
And I remember I did at one of the comic conventions back in 94, 95 in Kansas City. Okay, so we were doing card signings, right? So me and some fellow artists who were doing the digital stuff, we set up a table and we set our computers up. Because it was still new back then. And we would sign some cards, and then we would show them how we were doing illustrations on the computer. And there was this, I don't know the gentleman's name at the time. It's been so many years ago. Terrific artist. And he was giving a lecture. And his lecture was, the door to the room was right next to where we were set up. And at the end of his lecture, he was coming out, he and his wife. He must have been, like 70 years old at the time. And his wife goes, "Oh, honey, look at this," you know? And he had the look of sheer disdain when he saw the computer. And he just says, his comment was that really I took offense of. He goes, that's just, he said something to the effect that it was just some sort of a gimmicky box, and that they're not creating real art. And that tripped my trigger, man, you know? And I said, excuse me, we're not creating real art. So you're saying that I'm not a real artist? And we got into this debate, you know, and then there's this crowd was developing around this. And he says, well, all you're doing is pushing buttons and it does it for you. I go, oh,
right.
And so I turned the screen around so everybody could see. And I said, well, show me which button that I use to create a figure. You know, let's push some of these buttons. And I was just hitting the keys randomly, you know. And I said, it doesn't work that way. And I said, I have an electric tablet, a stylus here, and I draw. And I was showing how I was drawing things. And I said, this is just another tool. Albeit it's a very technical, highly advanced tool, but it's still a tool. I'm still an artist. You know, it's not doing my thinking for me. I'm just using it. And he was just like, you know, he was just mumbling and grumbling. And I said, you know, and I said, let's think of the art masters centuries ago. I said, come on, they were commercial artists at the time. You know, a lot of them were being hired to do works of art. And I said, well, what did they use at their disposal? I said, I'm sure they used, you know, the most technically advanced, you know, art supplies that they had available, whether it be paintbrushes, whatever the paints they would use, or canvas, board, whatever. But whatever the means was to create that piece of artwork, they used what they felt was the best to create that one specific piece of artwork. And I said, that's all I'm doing. I said, you know, that's all it is. It's just another tool. It's just the one that we have available today. And everybody in the crowd, they were going, yeah, that's right. and it's just another tool, and they were agreeable to it, but he just looked at it and he just shook his head, and he goes, it's just an ugly box to me. And I go, that's fine, and I don't blame him. I mean, he was set in his ways, and again, he was a terrific artist. I loved his ink style. I wish I could remember his name, but he did a lot of newspaper.
Do you remember the actual stories he worked on, the books he worked on, or the strips or whatever?
Well, yeah, they were comic strips that were not aired, but published in newspapers. And I wish I could remember. I really can't, man.
Was he an adventure strip guy?
Kind of something like yeah.
Well, it could have been. I mean, was it there were only so many of those that were coming out back then, or doing realistic anatomy.
But he had his golden age was even before that,
Was he 1930s?
He was more probably in that era, the 40s and 50s, where that's where he really shined. He was kind of like Eisner in a way. You know who Eisner was?
Well, sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
How was that? Did I pronounce it wrong?
No. I said yes, absolutely.
No, I was just waiting for somebody to say no so I could kick him out the chat.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, kind of like that. But that was still the era, And so, he had a really phenomenal inking style. So, but anyway,
it wasn't Al Williamson.
Oh wow! Mm. No, don't think so.
Okay.
And the only other people that I was thinking of was the one who did the one that Dick Giordano worked under for years and years, and he did that woman strip. She was like a crime fighter or detective. Something.
Chastity Blaze.
Oh wow!
Not that one. Not Modesty Blaze, but the other big strip. It was something Star. She was kind of Dick Giordano learned a lot of like understudied that guy. Anyway, there were a few people. When you said 50s, that made me wonder about that.
Yeah, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't remember. No.
You know what's really scary? I mean, he's talking about this in the 90s, and yet some of those same thought processes exist today.
Well, I'm sure, yeah.
Especially me, I started off as a traditional inker, and then I moved into digital inking. Mm-hmm. People poo-pooed it until I know I had one guy on my Facebook page. He's like, "You see that inking job that you did there? I mean, that's wonderful. You need to leave that digital stuff alone." And then I told him, "Like, that is digital.
You're right.
That is digital. That's not my brushes and my quill." So,
yeah.
Hey, what program are you using on that inking right there? I don't recognize.
This is Manga Studio that I'm using, if that's what you're asking.
Is that okay?
Right now, though, if you were to look it up, it's been rebranded back to Clip Studio because overseas it was always called Clip Studio, but for some reason when they brought it over here, it was called Manga Studio. But now they just decided, screw it, we're just going to use the same name finally.
Yeah. I played around with that, and I like that. I haven't done much in it, but I thought it looked familiar, and that's why I asked. And I don't have it big enough so I couldn't recognize it. But
I love it. I live and die by this program.
I'm the same way. I fucking love that program.
Awesome.
And it's set at a really great price right now. It's the MSRP is over $270, but
it's like $87 right now.
Yeah. So it's
the Pro version, like the EX version.
Yeah. So it's time. It's a good time to sort of try, really try it out because the price tag's clearly, set up for. They want to get some new. They're trying to really get some people to buy that program. So.
Yeah, I usually recommend it to every artist that I meet. You know, when they're talking about wanting to get into digital art, and they're using my art, saying, "And we love your stuff." You know, what are you using? I immediately say, "Mega Studio, man. Just do it. It's worth it."
Oh, Greg, Brenda Star.
Yes, that's one of the strips that came to mind. Although Giordano didn't work for the guy that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, okay.
I'll look it up, but hold on a second. Yeah, go ahead. But Brenda Star is an example of that kind of look, where I could see a guy like that getting really, really terse about digital back in those days. I mean,
yeah, it was filming.
So, I know we started late, but it's just about 10 p.m. here. I was thinking, I could really go on for a long time, but I want to get my video up tonight or tomorrow or in the AM before I go to bed. So we should probably cut this off soon. I had a question. Don, that's done by you, your icon?
Yeah, I did do that. That was
Yeah, it's simple, but it's gorgeous. I love it. Was there a reason you chose that character?
I think it's just because I had just seen the movie recently at that time. I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to do it. Just I've always liked that character, by the way.
Yeah.
And no, for no other reason. I just needed something to draw. That's what it is. And then I was just playing around with I think it was the square brush in Photoshop. I just wanted to stick with one. I create these little challenges for myself. I'll do a project and I'll just say, I'm going to do an illustration and I'm just going to use the soft airbrush and no other tool. I'm just going to do that and see what happens. The Colossus guy, I just wanted to use I don't know if it was a square brush or if it was angled, but one of them, I just picked one and I just wanted to see how far I could go with it and play around. So and I don't even know why I still have it as an icon for. I'm just too lazy, I guess, to really do something different. I guess I could pop my own face in there or do a caricature, but I don't know. But it just turned out. But I just started doing this whole. I just love faces. I just find them really challenging and interesting. Yeah. Particularly, you get the right lighting. I love playing around with that. So yeah. No other reason than that. It was something cool to draw.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess we didn't cover the topics, but I'll carry.
Actually, he kind of did. Seriously, he just did. I mean,
why make art?
Just
to make a living.
It's like, why'd you climb the mountain? Because it was there.
Yeah, we wanted to try it, see if we could do it.
Exactly.
Oh, and Peter, did you catch my David Finch piece? Just want to throw that back in your face again, just one more time.
What?
Did you catch my David Finch piece for the next Asgard?
I don't think so.
What the hell's
wrong with you? You mean you drew David Finch, or what do you mean?
No, David Finch. David Finch did the commission for me.
Oh! I'm thinking Twin Peaks.
Oh God! I'm done with the conversation now.
That would be David Lynch. L.
Yes,
Lynch.
yes.
Yeah. I no longer talk to Peter. Just want to let you guys know that this is the end of our relationship.
I know David Finch. Are
you sure?
I saw it. I've been so busy, man. I saw it, but I don't think I saw the finished piece. you know, in progress. I saw. Is that what you got on?
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. It's gorgeous. It's really nice.
Oh, Mr. Finch.
Yeah,
I think I have his like a couple of his lessons somewhere on my computer.
The fact that he did this at a convention, I was pissed off at him. I was just like, I just want to break your hands right now.
So is that is that regular traditional tools that he used, or
yeah, this pencil and Bristol board.
Wow.
But I did my digital inks to it. But
yeah, nice, very nice. Yeah, and he's a really good, nice kid.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a real good guy. But I did put up my Brett Booth piece to show him what Brett Booth had did for the first one, and just to like, hey, you see what Brett did? You can't be half stepping. You know, you got to do the real deal. Don't be bullshitting me.
Nah, that's awesome.
Oh,
Eric, you've been quiet.
Yeah, you guys been talking, so I've been just kind of going through some of my music for a little while you guys were talking. Trying to organize some shit.
Yeah, that's important, man.
Well, when you got a bunch of freaking, I don't know if any of you have ever worked on music, but I have like, right now this is overly complicated because how many tracks I have to work with to make a song. A lot of these are empty because I haven't recorded vocals yet, and I haven't recorded other guitar bits that I want to do.
But you have it all set up.
I have it all organized by color. I like the color code things because it's so much easier when I go to this view. I'm like, oh, I have to read all the names. Like, okay, the orangey color is vocals, green's guitars, everything's color coded. I come over here and I'm like, okay, even the file itself here is color coordinated, and it's just like, makes things so much easier.
That's how I do all my Photoshop files, particularly when it's for outside stuff for clients or whatever. All my pieces all layers are grouped.
Mm-hmm.
And all stuff is color coded, and everything's named with, you know, the kind of naming that, you know, a kid who's like you know, like an intern could understand, because you know, there's nothing funky, and it's all
everything is labeled here. Although I use shorthand for a couple of them. For like, instead of vocals, I use the word vox because that's just kind of the shorthand for vocal.
Well, sure,
takes up the space.
And when I did film editing and video editing, you know, that's another one that has the equivalent level of need for, you got to have your filing and your everything together, because otherwise it's a mess.
Things get confusing quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, how's somebody supposed to fix something?
I mean, I feel lucky that like the type of music I do, it's mostly kind of like doom metal kind of music. So I don't have like, you see all these tracks. If you were to do like a standard pop album or something, or a pop song, most of these tracks would already have like a bunch of media files for everything. And it'd be like 40, 50, up to 100 tracks. And you're just like, what's the point?
A lot more than that sometimes, yeah.
Like, all I need is, I have my guitars, I have bass, which I have 2 because I wanted some grit underneath just for texture. I have all the drum pieces, which I use a digital drum because I don't have the space to make up a real drum set. And then I have like a reverb channel to send anything I want to do reverb on, which right now it's just my vocals because I'm still learning how to properly tweak vocals. And then I have my intro, which is literally like just a sound clip that I created. Okay, and I have a click track at the top because gotta stay in time. Freaking vocals are just barren because I just haven't been bothered to write the lyrics for this song yet.
They'll come when they come.
Yeah, I just need to actually sit and listen to it a couple times to get the vocals. Like, I've already named the song, so I know the theme I'm going with. I just need to actually listen to it, listen to what the melody should be, and just freaking write the vocals.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to do any screaming in this song, though. I did screaming in a different song, and I'm like, I can't do that for every song. That's going to kill me. I'm not that good at scream singing yet. So I'm like, I don't want to push it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Cool. So let's round this up, and I'm going to be doing this every Monday. I'm going to switch up the time so I can get other people who can't make, like an 8 o'clock show, like Pipper from our Facebook group. I'm not sure what time. I think earlier my time would work better with her day, which is the other side of the world.
Well, yeah, she's in the freaking UK, so like,
yeah, yeah,
time be freaky.
Yeah, I think actually when she came on the show previously, we did the show later, like past, like close to midnight or past midnight or something.
Yeah, please let's not go back to that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep it mostly at 8 o'clock.
Thank you.
But I'll change it up here and there so I can have people like Pipper and, the other half of the world.
If it's a Monday, Peter, then pretty much any time works, unless you're going to do like, 4:30 in the morning or 6 in the morning or something like that, because you want to accommodate UTC.
If it's any time between like 9 in the morning and basically now, I'm good.
Yeah.
But if you want to start doing like UTC -4 or something like that, you're on your own, buddy.
I hate it. Well, I try to be accommodating, but
no, it'll be good. It'll be good because you got different people from different places, so you should really get the,
Yeah.
You should do that.
So, yeah, this was a lot of fun. I hope you guys had fun and got some work done. I was sketching the whole time, even though I'm probably upside down.
You are upside down.
I feel weird because like if I come on here, I can't really work on music because I'm listening to you guys. If I'm working on music, I ain't hearing shit. All I hear is loud guitars and sorry, can't hear you.
No, you guys were extremely helpful. I got about 2/3 of the way done through what I have to get done, so that's great.
Looking good.
If I ever get a camera set up, I'll set up a camera and I'll just be like playing drums for you guys. I'm like, I'm just gonna play drums for you guys. That works. By the way, I've learned how to play drums.
Ben's still working.
Oh yeah, never stopped. Hey, I got 100 and some pages to do.
Yeah,
can't stop, won't stop.
But tomorrow.
All right, so I'm gonna go from left to right. Just shout out links and anything you want people to check out. I'll start with Ben.
Well, you can find me on Ben Jones Art Commissions on Facebook, Ben Jones Art on YouTube, Ben Jones Artist on Twitch, and I believe it's Exiled Angel on Twitter. And Asgard is now for sale on Amazon.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. Don?
Yeah. You can find me at my webpage. It's just donaldcassidy.com. I think you can just Google, as far as YouTube, same thing, Donald Cassidy. You find some of my YouTube videos on that. Pretty much that's it. I'm not too far out there as far as a presence. But I am who I am. That's it.
You're the original.
What's that?
You're the original.
The OG artist.
And Eric?
Yeah, you can pretty much find me. You can find my art and personal stuff by looking up Eric Faris, Faris. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Tumblr. I'm on Facebook. I think I have a Twitter. I have a Twitter. If you want to look up my music, you can look up my band. We're called Black Bog. If you're just look up that name, and if you see basically this picture that I'm showing here of the cover, then you're found us. We're on Bandcamp right now. You can find us on iTunes. Like our first EP is up, so you can look for that. But yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. And Greg.
I added it to my graphic in my lower third. But my name is Gregory Giordano. You can find me at flameape.org and anywhere online as FlameApe. You can also see my art on Facebook at FlameApe, the art of Gregory Giordano, and my weird Western horror comic Holiday Mountain Madness can be previewed at holiday with 2 L's comic.com. And we also have a Facebook page for Holiday Mountain Madness as well. But you can buy the first issue any old time you like today, maybe.
Awesome. Yeah, go check it out, everybody.
Yeah.
And
Do it.
I am Peter Palmiotti, or all across the internet as Peter Palmiotti. So go look for me. It's crazy.
Go seek him out.
Thank you for watching my show. We had a couple of people in the chat. I saw Mike. I saw James. Thank you guys for watching. There were a lot more viewers earlier. Thank you, everybody, whoever showed up. And we'll be here again next week. Maybe a different time. I'll let you all know ahead of time. And good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.